There are moments in life that split everything into two halves, before and after. For Baldev Singh, a devoted Sikh priest who had spent over 4 decades serving his faith with unwavering discipline, that moment came not at the altar, not in prayer, not through decades of religious study, but in the cold silence between life and death. What he witnessed during those few minutes when his body stopped functioning completely would dismantle everything he thought he knew about God, salvation, and the meaning of true spiritual peace. And when he came back, when breath returned to his lungs and his eyes opened again, he carried with him a message so profound, so unexpected, that even he struggled to find the words to explain it. This is his story. Stay with us until the very end, because what Baldev Singh brought back from the other side is something that will challenge you, move you, and perhaps even change the way you see your own faith forever. Baldev Singh was not an ordinary man of faith. Born into a deeply religious Punjabi family, he had walked the path of the Sikh tradition since childhood. By the time he reached his 40s, he had become a respected Granthi, a priest and reader of the Guru Granth Sahib, the sacred scripture of the Sikh faith. Every single morning before the sun rose, Baldev was already awake, already in prayer, already immersed in ritual. His life was structured, disciplined, and entirely devoted to spiritual practice. He took pride in this structure. He believed deeply and sincerely that closeness to God was something that had to be earned through hours of recitation, through fasting, through service, through the relentless, tireless effort of a man who refused to waste a single moment. He had built his entire identity around this conviction. If you worked hard enough, if you prayed long enough, if you were disciplined enough, God would draw near to you. But somewhere, beneath all of that discipline, underneath the layers of ritual and routine, there was a quiet exhaustion that Baldev had never allowed himself to acknowledge. A fatigue not of the body, but of the soul. A secret, gnawing feeling that despite everything he had done, despite all the years of faithful service, he still hadn't found the deep, unshakable peace that he was searching for. He never spoke about this to anyone. In his community, he was the one people came to for answers. He was the spiritual anchor. He couldn't afford to be uncertain. So he buried the question deeper and prayed harder. Then, one ordinary evening in the late autumn, Baldev Singh's heart stopped. He had been experiencing chest discomfort for several days, but had dismissed it as stress and fatigue. That evening, while sitting quietly after his evening prayers, the pain became unbearable. Within minutes, he collapsed. His family called for emergency help immediately, but by the time medical assistance arrived, Baldev Singh was clinically unresponsive. His heart had entered a dangerous rhythm, and for a period of several minutes, there was no detectable heartbeat. Medically speaking, he was gone. But Baldev Singh was not gone at all. The first thing he became aware of was not darkness, it was light. Not the harsh, blinding kind, but something softer, warmer, and more alive than anything he had ever experienced with his physical eyes. He described it later as light that had a feeling like being wrapped in something that recognized you completely, that knew everything about you and was not disappointed by any of it. He found himself moving through this light without effort, without walking, without any of the physical strain that had defined his aging body. There was no pain, there was no weight. There was only this extraordinary, overwhelming sensation of being fully, completely, unconditionally accepted. And then he saw the figure. Baldev Singh was very careful when he later described this moment. He did not say he saw a vision or a hallucination. He said he saw a presence, a being of extraordinary radiance and compassion, standing before him in a light that seemed to come from within, rather than from any external source. The being's eyes, he said, were unlike anything human. They held the entire universe in them, every sorrow, every joy, every broken heart. every moment of grace. And they looked at Baldev with a love so complete that he felt his entire spiritual framework begin to tremble. He knew, in a way that bypassed all logic and all prior learning, exactly who this was. It was Jesus. Now, understand what this moment meant for a man like Baldev Singh. He had not grown up with Jesus. He had not studied Christianity. He had not prayed to Christ or considered him central to his spiritual journey in any meaningful way. Within the Sikh tradition, Jesus is acknowledged with respect as a holy teacher, but Baldev had never had a personal encounter with him, never felt any particular pull toward him. And yet, here in this place, beyond the boundaries of the living world, the one who stood before him was unmistakably, powerfully, undeniably Jesus Christ. Baldev later said that he tried to speak, but before any words could form, Jesus already knew everything he had ever wanted to ask. Every buried question, every private doubt, every moment of spiritual exhaustion that he had hidden beneath layers of religious performance, Jesus knew all of it, and he did not condemn any of it. Instead, Jesus spoke, not necessarily in words that Baldev could later repeat word for word, but in a form of communication that was deeper than language. Understanding transferred directly, heart to heart, without the need for translation or interpretation. The first thing conveyed was this: God cannot be reached by effort alone. This hit Baldev Singh like a wave. His entire life had been built on the idea that devotion required labor, that closeness to the divine had to be earned, maintained, and proven through discipline. But in this moment, standing before this being of infinite love, he felt the complete absurdity of that belief wash over him. Not because effort was wrong or meaningless, but because effort was never meant to be the bridge between a human soul and God. The bridge already existed. It had always existed, and it was built entirely from grace. The second message came in the form of an experience rather than words. Suddenly, Baldev Singh was shown, or perhaps allowed, to feel a kind of review of his inner life. Not his accomplishments, not his rituals, or his prayers, or his years of faithful service, but the moments in between, the times he had grown impatient with a struggling community member, the times he had let pride creep into his spiritual practice, the moments when he had performed religion rather than lived it, the times when he had been so busy maintaining the appearance of holiness that he had failed to actually be present for the people around him. He wept. Not from shame. The presence of Jesus carried no shame, no punishment, no judgment in the punishing sense, but from recognition, from the deep, clarifying realization that he had sometimes allowed religion to become a wall rather than a door. He had used discipline as armor, and in doing so, he had sometimes kept out the very grace he was working so hard to earn. Jesus showed him that true spiritual life was not about building a record good enough to present before God. It was about surrender, about releasing the exhausting grip of self-sufficiency and allowing love to do what effort never could. The third and most powerful part of Baldev's experience came at what felt like the very end. Jesus looked at him with those eyes that contained everything, and communicated something that Baldev Singh has spent years trying to articulate in human language. The closest he has been able to come is this: every soul that genuinely seeks the face of God, regardless of the name they use, regardless of the tradition they were born into, is known, is seen, is loved. No sincere search goes unnoticed. No honest prayer falls into empty air. The paths are many, but the destination is the same light, and that light has already reached out toward every searching soul. And then, with a gentleness that Baldev described as the most powerful force he had ever encountered, Jesus said something he will never forget. Come to me, not with your record, not with your achievements. Come as you are. In that moment, every wall Baldev Singh had ever built around his soul came down. 40+ years of religious armor, of spiritual performance, of the exhausting project of being good enough. All of it dissolved in an instant, and what remained was something he had never felt in decades of prayer. Pure, unearned, undeserved peace. He came back. The medical team managed to restore his heart rhythm, and after several minutes of unconsciousness, Baldev Singh opened his eyes. He was disoriented, weak, and overwhelmed, but not by fear, by the weight of what he had just experienced, by the urgency of what he felt he needed to share. In the days and weeks that followed his recovery, Baldev Singh underwent a transformation that everyone around him could see. The rigidity was gone. The spiritual performance was gone. In its place was something quieter, warmer, and far more powerful, a genuine lived-out humility, a tenderness toward people who were struggling, a new way of speaking about God that focused not on rules and discipline, but on grace and relationship. He began to talk openly about Jesus, not in a way that abandoned his Sikh heritage or rejected the tradition he loved, but in a way that honored the truth he had encountered. He told his community that what he had experienced was not a rejection of his faith, but a deepening of it. That the God he had always sought had revealed himself in a way he hadn't expected, through a messenger he hadn't anticipated, with a message he hadn't known he needed. He said that Jesus did not appear to him to condemn his tradition, or to demand that he abandon everything he knew. Jesus appeared to him because Baldev's soul had been crying out quietly, beneath all the discipline, beneath all the ritual for grace. And grace had answered. What do we take from the experience of Baldev Singh? Perhaps the most important thing is this. The spiritual journey was never meant to be a performance. It was never meant to be a project of self-improvement, impressive enough to earn divine approval. Every tradition that points toward God at its deepest, most honest core acknowledges that we cannot reach the divine by our own strength alone. We need something given to us, not earned by us. Baldev Singh, a man who had devoted his entire adult life to religious discipline, had to step outside the boundaries of his living body to discover the truth that had been waiting for him all along. Not the truth of a different religion, not a verdict against his life's work, but the truth of grace, that God's love does not begin when we become good enough. It was already there. It has always been there. And the voice that told him so in that place of light, in that space between living and dying, was the voice of Jesus. Gentle, unhurried, unimpressed by credentials, and untroubled by imperfection. Reaching out not to the priest, not to the record of 40 faithful years, but to the tired, searching, beautiful soul underneath all of it. Come as you are. That is the message Baldev Singh carried back from the edge of eternity. Not a warning, not a doctrinal correction, not a list of things to do differently. Just an invitation, the most radical, most transformative, most life-altering invitation a human soul can ever receive. And if you are reading this right now, carrying your own quiet exhaustion, your own buried doubts, your own secret questions about whether you are enough, that invitation belongs to you too. Come as you are.